guys, today we will introduce you to one of the most iconic places in Chernobyl Exclusion Zone, the Kopachi village. During the next weeks, some of the videos we will publish will be about different interesting and other famous places that you can find in the zone or just near it. And sometimes you will hear things that we have learned ourselves traveling there, as we spent years doing so. Today's subject is especially close to us, and not only because we have managed to scan it and transfer it to our game, Chernobylite, almost one-to-one, but also because of how big an impression this place made on us. As one of our team members said once, the sound of silence in the whole zone was both terrifying and calming. And this also applies to the Kopachi village. You can check some of our behind the scenes videos later, because they are here on our channel and they are a great background for you to understand how deep we sank into Chernobyl's story. Well, there is a reason we made productions about it after all. But enough about ourselves. Let's start the episode. Kopachi is a small village located near the Chernobyl power plant in northern Ukraine, near the border with Belarus. Like many others in the region, Kopachi was primarily focused on agriculture, so the residents grew crops and raised livestock to provide for themselves and their families. Prior to the disaster, it was a thriving community of approximately 1,000 or a bit more people. The village has a long history that dated maybe several centuries back, similar to other places near it, as I mentioned in one of the previous episodes, that Chernobyl itself has at least 6 or 7 centuries of history of its own. But Kopachi was first mentioned by Pokielewicz in Tales of Inhabited Localities of Kiev province, published in 1864 if I'm not wrong. As you may guess if you know the history of that part of Europe, in the last 1 or 2 centuries, the Kopachi had survived wars, famines and other hardships over the years. But back then, in 1970s, life in Kopachi was maybe simple, but also fulfilling. The residents lived in small homes and it was largely self-sufficient. Similar to other villages in the region and many places around the world really, being so small, Kopachi had a close-knit community with people relying on each other for support. It was surrounded by lush green fields and forests, and the people living there often spend their days working in the fields or tending to their livestock. In the evenings, they would gather with their families and friends to share a meal, tell stories and enjoy each other's company. Nonetheless, unfortunately nothing could prepare the residents for what was to come in the spring of 1986. As it is situated about 4 kilometers south of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, it was also the victim of the catastrophic nuclear accident that occurred on April 26 that year. It caused a massive release of radioactive material into the atmosphere, and the wind carried the radiation towards the village. Today, Kopachi is located within the Chornobyl Exclusion Zone, which covers an area of about 2,600 square kilometers. You can find out more about the zone in the first video on our Chernobyl Stories playlist. And if you came here by the chance, here is a quick summary of the disaster. On April 26, 1986, the Chernobyl nuclear power plant suffered a catastrophic meltdown, causing a massive explosion and releasing radioactive material into the atmosphere. The village of the Kopachi was one of the closest settlements to the plant, and it was heavily impacted by the event. In the immediate aftermath of the disaster, the Soviet authorities made the decision to evacuate all the residents from the area around the plant, including those from Kopachi. They also decided to bury the contaminated soil, houses and other materials in and around the village to prevent further contamination. The place was essentially wiped off the map. The remaining buildings and homes were buried underground. However, some of them survived that, and thanks to this we had a chance to scan some of them and create 3D models that you can see in our projects. Despite the dangers, there have been several attempts to document the village and its history, such as what happened to the village in the years following the disaster and how the site is being managed today. The burial site of the village and its surroundings are now known as the Kopachi Radiation Cemetery, and to be honest, it is a haunting and eerie place, with rows of abandoned buildings, vehicles and other debris buried beneath the soil. However, due to unknown reasons, some of them are partially or wholly uncovered, like the place I will tell you about later in this video. As for the site itself, it is still heavily contaminated. Despite the tragedy that took place, Kopachi is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Although the village itself no longer really exists, the memories and stories of the residents of it continue to live on, serving as a powerful reminder of the Chernobyl disaster and the importance of ensuring that such a catastrophic event will never happen again. In the years that followed the disaster, Soviet Union collapsed and Ukraine gained independence. Because of this, the management of the Chernobyl site was taken over by the Ukrainian government and efforts were made to improve the safety and security of the site, like constructing a new sarcophagus. But let's get back to the before Chernobyl times for a second. We have to speak about one of the most famous buildings in Kopachi, the kindergarten. The kindergarten was built in late 1960s. As the sign at the door said, it was done in honor of the 50th anniversary of Great October Revolution. As Soviet as it could be. The building was briefly colored and had modern looks that stood out from the other, more traditional buildings in the village. The kindergarten was designed to serve the needs of the growing community in Kopachi, and it quickly became a central hub for the village. Well, at least we can imagine that, because not many memoirs from the residents actually said a lot about it. As any kindergarten around the world, this was the place where parents could drop off their children before work and where the little ones could play and learn in a safe and supportive environment. At least that's what a kindergarten should look like. When the explosion occurred at Chernobyl nuclear power plant on April 26, 1986, everything changed. The kindergarten was hit by a powerful shockwave, which shattered the windows and the doors and caused significant damage to the building. In the aftermath of the disaster, the kindergarten was abandoned and it quickly became overgrown with vegetation. Today, the remains of the kindergarten are still haunting the woods that claimed most of the exclusion zone. However, the building can still be found there. Its condition is what we could at least call not welcoming. Any entry could end with injuries or even death, as the kindergarten, like many other buildings in the zone, is basically decaying. One false step and you can end up a few stories down in the basement, because even the floors could literally turn into dust if you are lucky enough. Despite all that happened, the kindergarten remains a powerful symbol of the impact of the Chernobyl disaster on the local communities, and it has become an iconic image that is known around the world. Many photographers and documentarians have visited the site to document the haunting remains of the kindergarten, which stand as the reminder of the tragedy that occurred in Chernobyl. As we told you in one of our behind the scenes videos, there is this unwritten game. People are taking different Soviet-era-like dolls and leaving them in various places around the zone. Some of the dolls are actually from the zone, but probably some of them were also carried into it, as there are many of them lying around and scaring the stalkers. You could say they are moving themselves in a way. We were traveling to the zone on a regular basis, and some of our team members can recall seeing a doll in one place and then next time it wasn't there anymore. Or on the opposite, dolls were appearing from nowhere in the same manner. Where once was an empty room, the next time we visited the zone there was a doll sitting by the window, sitting on a chair, or simply lying on the floor. But back to the main subject. Despite the ongoing efforts to manage and study the site, the village of Kopachi remains a ghost town, similar to Pripyat. The story of the Kopachi is a tragic one, like many others in the area. Its residents were forced to abandon their homes and their way of life in the aftermath of the disaster, but their memories and stories live on. I hope you had a good time watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to see the next ones that will be published here in the next weeks, and watch the previous videos from our Chernobyl Stories playlist. That's it for today, guys. Take care, stay safe, and see you next week.